Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tabor Talk. Good afternoon, actually. It's noon, Monday, 12 o'clock, lunchtime. So, getting right into this. Oh, and by the way, I'm your host, Michael Tabor. So, I am going back and listening to some older Tim Ferriss podcasts. Right now, finishing up on episode 58, and Tim's guest was Alex Bloomberg. If people don't know who Alex Bloomberg is, he is an American entrepreneur, radio journalist, former producer for NPR, and his best known works, he's got two very successful podcasts. One is This American Life, and the other is Planet Money. He's also co-founder and CEO of the podcast network Gimlet Media. Gimlet Media. So he is a hugely successful guy, and this was actually the podcast was taped December 15th, so it is a bit old, but nevertheless, the topic of discussion was how to have a successful podcast, having a blockbuster podcast. And obviously that interests me. I'm developing this YouTube channel, Tabor Talk and Podcasting. So he said something very interesting. Two things. Number one, be aware of your own boredom. And what does he mean by that? Well, the truth of the matter is that not everyone, like if you're watching me, I don't have this focused, scintillating personality 24/7. When I turn off the recording, I'm a regular person just like you, right? And by the way, this is kind of loose. I don't have any notes. It's totally unscripted. This is Tabor Talk, but I am concentrating. I want to make this good. I want to get people's attention. I want to hold it. But the reality is, in your waking life, in real life, your spouse, your children, your coworkers, people meander and digress. They'll talk about, oh, did you see the game last night? Did you see the Giants lose? And like, oh, and then maybe you might, oh, did you read this? You know, that's real life. When you're doing something like this, you want people to listen, right? So there's the challenge there, to try to be aware of when I am boring or when I'm losing people. Be interesting. Be yourself. Like I'm totally being myself. I don't want to be pretentious. I'm totally myself, candid, Tabor Talk. But then again, don't go digress, meander like crazy where you lose people. So the number, which is a good lead in to the second important thing to be aware of if you want a successful podcast, is don't lose people or confuse people. You know, audio, unlike print, is when it's, especially if it's live. Now with this podcasting and radio on demand, you can actually stop, pause, rewind, and go back if you get confused or lose something. But radio, historically, traditionally, it's on the air, in the air, and especially if it's a very difficult, sort of dense sort of point, you might get like, oh, I'm confused, and then your mind, you start thinking about it, and the broadcast keeps going, and then you're lost, almost sometimes lost forever. You can't pick up, and then when you go, oh yeah, I know what he was talking about now. I got to get back. So you figure it out if you do, like, oh, and then you miss this middle part, and then when you pick up, you're kind of lost. It's very hard. So what I do is I stop, pause, go back. There you go. So those two things, don't be boring and try not to confuse people. Stay on point. So, and here's another thing with me. I am an unusual person in a sense that when I listen to podcasts, I listen intently. I am there. And I have a notebook, I have a pen, and if I get lost, I pause and go back. And sometimes I listen to some podcasts twice over. Not usually three, sometimes if I'm really interested, but I always have a pen and notepad, and I listen very carefully. And I don't go on. If I'm lost or confused, I stop, pause, go back. And I listen to 6 podcasts. I actually jotted these down. I know by heart, but anyway. Tim Ferriss, Eric Weinstein, who just started a podcast, Sean Carroll, who started his podcast last year, Sam Harris, who started in 2014, and of course my guy Joe Rogan, who started in 2009, and then the Very Bad Wizards, who also started around 2014, and I listened to every single one of their podcasts. Again, Tim Ferriss, I'm going back and catching up. But the thing is, I'm not your average person. So I'm not going to get lost because I take this stuff very seriously. And I don't, these guys are the best. These six, listen, they're human beings. Sometimes they digress and maybe they are a little boring and, but I'm patient because I know who they are and I stick with it. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. How to have a successful podcast, how to have a successful YouTube channel. Don't be boredom, don't be boring, and if you just be aware of this and try not to confuse people. Okay, good friends, good books, and a sleepy conscience. Peace, love, and understanding here on Tabor Talk from the Catskills.